Hey everyone, this is Shutdown Line Corey from Twitter, and this is my post-mortem season recap, whatever you want to call it, on the Carolina Hurricanes. And I wanted to do something like this just because I have a lot of thoughts just bouncing around in my head about how the season ended, how this weird season went, what the team can do in the next few months, and I figured it'd be better to kind of get it all out there now instead of just throwing them in broken thoughts on Twitter. I'm just going to throw them in broken thoughts on Twitch. And this is my first time doing something like this, so bear with me a little bit here. I did a test run on my phone, and everything seems like it's going okay. I have this recording for later, so if anybody can't watch now, they can always watch later, and I might get it up on YouTube. That's what I wanted to do at the start, but I guess on YouTube you have to you have to wait like 24 hours or something when you set up your live stream or something like that. Anyway, I posted some questions on Twitter. I asked on Twitter if anybody has any questions for me if I did something like this, and I got a lot more responses than I thought. So I figure it'd be a good time. I figure this would be a cool format to do something like this, and hopefully you all enjoy it, and maybe I'll do it again and get a better microphone, a better setup, just so I'm not like doing this in front of my backyard. Anyway, without further ado, let's just get started. I'm going to start with this question. It's actually a really good one. Maybe do a little homework. And they're asking, can you talk about the penalty kill and how the Lightning adjusted to take advantage of the aggressive and sometimes over-aggressive system that the Hurricanes employ, and what could they have done differently in response? Yeah, this is an interesting one because the first couple of games of the series, Tampa Bay, it was a pretty good stalemate. Tampa Bay got that power play goal in game one, of kind of a broken play. I think it was point, a deflection. But the Hurricanes penalty kill looked really good in the first couple of games, and then it was game three, where just the wheels kind of fell off for Carolina. They got blitzed for 2 power play goals, and then game 4 was just an absolute nightmare, at least after the first few power plays. But it's actually a really good question because the Hurricanes are a very aggressive team on the penalty kill, and they kind of stayed true to that word in this series because they attacked the Lightning. They were pushing for shorthanded goals. They were attacking Hedman to try to, when the puck was loose and going to Hedman at the point, they were trying to poke it away and have a guy kind of create a shorthanded rush, and it did work the first couple of games. Like, they didn't get any shorthanded goals, but they were disrupting the Lightning's power play enough to the point where it could have been an equalizer, because in a series like this, Tampa Bay is just a better team than Carolina, so they're going to need to do anything they can on the margins to get an advantage, and the power play is one of those things. And I actually went back and watched Tampa Bay's power play goals, what they were doing that was different. Oh, yeah, that might not be I might want to get rid of that. Yeah, I might want to get rid of my screen there. Sorry, a bit of a newbie here. Anyway, I went back and watched Tampa Bay's power play goals in games 2, 3, and 4 to see what they were doing differently and catching Carolina kind of out of their system. And what caught my eye a lot is Tampa Bay didn't get a lot of Tampa Bay's power play goals were off broken plays. They were off plays that the Hurricanes disrupted. There weren't a lot of goals they scored in the traditional 1-3-1 umbrella setup or whatever you want to call it. It was a lot of plays where Carolina either forced them to dump the puck in, broke up an entry, and Tampa Bay just kind of improvised and did what they could, which is pretty hard to defend. I'll show you some clips here if hopefully my computer cooperates. This is from game 2, and this is a good example of what the Hurricanes penalty kill looks like when it's at its best. You see at the line here, point is going to enter into the line here. The Hurricanes are kind of stacked 1-on-3. They force him into a corner, and Tampa gets a decent entry here. It's a chip and chase that they retrieve, but the Hurricanes are in pretty good shape. Right here, there's really nowhere for Kucherov to go with the puck at all because McGinn is right there to break up the play from behind the net. And there was a lot of that in the first two games of the series, but it didn't really stay that way because after that, Tampa Bay kind of adjusted. They kind of worked on they kind of knew that, okay, this team is going to come after us. They're going to chase the puck a lot. They're going to attack. They're going to put a lot of pressure on wherever the puck is. So if we can just react a second quicker than them, then their whole power kill strategy just kind of worked, just kind of blows up in their face. Like, this is game 3 where that kind of happened. Like, watch this. It's the same entry, sort of. Like, right here. It's the same entry that Tampa Bay has, or Tampa Bay tries. Like, it's the same penalty kill setup, sort of. Like, there's 3 guys at the line instead of 2. It's a little more structured from Carolina, but the entry, the same thing. They try to challenge point entering the zone, but watch this. So they try to kind of play the body on point, force a dump in, force a puck to the corner that they can clear, but he kept control of it the entire time. And right now, Carolina's got 3 guys on one side of the puck, and Kucherov's got a clear lane to the slot here. Now he doesn't score on it, but the trailer's right there, and he got his own rebound. So not much Carolina could really do about it because they were over aggressive on playing the entry, and Tampa Bay just executed it perfectly. I don't know if it's like a lucky break with point keeping the puck for that long and the rebound going right to Kucherov, but that's the kind of risk you take when you're over aggressive on the penalty kill, because when you're facing a team like this, if they're just a second quicker to react than you, then if you're being aggressive, then it's gonna kind of blow up in your face like that. So that's kind of one thing that happened. It's really just a matter of execution, and they did make some adjustments. Especially in Game 4. Like, watch that. What was interesting about this is Tampa Bay didn't have a lot of power plays where they got set up. Like, I was watching the power plays in the first 2 games, and Tampa Bay did not get set up into this real, like, traditional power play formation, pretty much any of them, because all of their goals are off broken plays and broken entries. But this is where things got a little different. So the Hurricanes, instead, this time, like, what the Hurricanes usually do is they're very aggressive on the puck carrier. They create a lot of pressure points to make you make a move quickly, kind of force you into plays that didn't work. That's why it works so well against Nashville. Like, Nashville has a very deliberate and slow power play, whereas against Tampa Bay, they're not really like that. They make a lot of plays out of nothing. This is one of the times where they don't do that. They're running a lot of set plays at the point, and look at where the Hurricanes are. They're kind of in a more traditional power play setup. They have the pass to the slot blocked off well. They're going to give Tampa Bay the point here, give up the point shot to Hedman in just a second. But what makes this work is they have 3 guys down low as opposed to 2 for Tampa Bay, so they can just clear a rebound if it happens. Now, this is risky too, because Hedman's very good about getting his shot through from the point, and Killorn, Point, Kucherov, all these guys are very good about tipping pucks, but the Hurricanes, they've gotten burned so much from being aggressive this series that I think they decided to play a little more conservative there, and they did kill off this penalty. This was the first of 3 that they took in that game. And they got through the first 3 unscathed, but eventually that kind of fell apart because I think they were like, okay, we're fine now. Maybe we can go back to what worked for us in the regular season. Like, right here is a good example. This is the goal that this, in my opinion, pretty much ended the game. But it's a tie game. Tampa Bay got that late power play. And watch this. Now watch what they do right here. There's a loose puck battle. Jordan Staal tries to poke it out, but Hedman keeps it in. It's going back down low, and right now Tampa Bay's got a 2-on-1 in front of the net, but Brady Shea is right there, and he kind of reacts poorly to this. Like, I don't really know what he's doing exactly. He's kind of caught in the middle, but he's also outnumbered because the 2 forwards got caught up high from trying to pinch for a shorthanded goal or a clear, which is another risk-reward thing. So now Tampa Bay's got basically a 3-on-2 in front of the net, and they're not going to miss on that often. So yeah, just being over aggressive, kind of being over aggressive hurt them. It's what they do. This is just what they do though, and it's just what they do though. There's also some play. There's also some plays there that guys like Jordan Stahl and guys like Jordan Stahl usually get that puck out like 9 times out of 10. But having maybe play keeping at the points and ended up being the deciding factor and put a game-winning goal in that game at least. But yeah, I mean, I think if they kept their power, I think if they kept their power play or if they kept their penalty kill what they were doing in the first part of Game 4, I think they're fine. But at the same time, there were also some broken plays that Tampa Bay created out of nothing that just are the result of like a missed clear or something like that. But that also goes hand in hand with being aggressive, like this play here from Game 3. Like, this one was interesting to me because it's a double slot pass from Tampa, which is insane and something the Hurricanes pretty much never give up. But what happens is they try to challenge Hedden at the point here. It doesn't work, so Tampa Bay's got a numbers advantage in the zone. They create a slot pass. Pesci takes away this passing lane, but that's not where the lane is. The lane is the guy that Stamkos is looking for is actually right here. And nobody on the Hurricanes is looking at him because they're all in scramble mode from not getting the puck out. And then things get worse because they do react to it in time, but Braden Point is also right here, creating another passing lane, basically out of nothing. And Marty Niches is basically that Mr. Krabs meme right now, where he's just dizzy and doesn't know what's going on because you got 3 passes going across the slot in a matter of 2 seconds. And that's hard for any team to defend. So really, you got to give credit to Tampa Bay there for just being very good at hockey and improvising on the power play. Those guys have been together for so long that they know what each other's doing, they know their tendencies. And any special teams advantage that Tampa Bay or Carolina had going into that series was basically null and void. So yeah, I mean, I give credit. I mean, Carolina did try to adjust, but execution wasn't good enough, and if you make one mistake, Tampa Bay is just going to burn you. And I am going to let my dog outside. I don't know if you can see her on screen, because she does not like it when I am talking to nobody. She does not like it when I do podcasts, and gets very antsy. Anyway, that was a good question. I like kind of breaking things down in the film room. I don't get to do that when I do podcasts and stuff. I don't really get to do that, so that was pretty cool to kind of illustrate some plays a little bit. But we got to move on. So the next question is, what non-UFA players could you see the Canes moving on from, not including prospects? So are we not counting Jake Gardner is the question, because he's the obvious one that they pretty much have to move on from. Because he didn't play. He played one game all playoffs. He played maybe 5 games down the stretch. I know he was injured, but they played Max Lajoie over him in a playoff game, and I think they played him I don't know if they played him in the top 4, but he was playing a lot in overtime. And you don't do that unless Gardner is hurt or you just don't trust him at all. I don't know how they're getting rid of that contract though. It's just rough. Like, I think there's still 2 years left on it. It didn't really work out the way they planned. Didn't really fit in. He didn't fit in, but he also didn't really play the way we expected him to. Like, he wasn't really great at getting the puck out of the zone cleanly. He kind of just flings it off the glass at first blush now, which is what the rest of the team does. But Gardner's wasn't really fit to play that way, so they got to figure out what to do there. I don't know if they're gonna buy him out or try to get Seattle to take him, but I don't know if they're gonna buy him out or try to get Seattle to take him or something. I mean, I personally just buy him out, and it's also if I'm his agent, I'm doing everything I can to get out of there, because you got benched for the entire playoffs. I don't know why you would want to stay. Yeah. They just have to move on from that. But as for less obvious ones, I'm not entirely sure. I think they do need to have a conversation about what Brady Shea does is it worth 5.25 million? Because I have a lot of respect for the role he plays, how much minutes he plays. Those are hard minutes, like on the penalty kill and doing a lot of the heavy lifting, so Pesci can move the puck. But they do need to have a conversation on whether or not they can get somebody else to do that for less money. But I don't know if they need to do that this year, though. I think they can live with Shea's contract in another year because Seattle's taking a because this year Seattle's taking a contract. I don't really want to mess with the top four. You're in a situation where you might lose Dougie Hamilton, you might lose Gardner to a buyout or something, and you might lose Jake Bean to Seattle. So I don't really want to subtract for the defense core at the moment. And I mean, Warren Foegele's is a RFA, and there's some conversation on whether or not the Hurricanes should keep him or not. I'm not sure. He's kind of a dark horse pick for Seattle for me, but I'm not entirely sure if they want to just give an RFA away for nothing. Because, like, I think Fogel's a little redundant with what the team has right now, but at the same time, he's an NHL player who can score some goals and play in your top 9. And it depends if that's not something you really want to, like, give away for nothing. The next question is, there are 2 questions here. One of them just says Dougie Hamilton ? And the other one says, how could this team fill the hole that Hamilton leaves as a RHD if he signs somewhere else? And, well, the question is, if he leaves as an RFA, they are not replacing him straight up. They pretty much can't do that. Like, I know he's got his issues in the defensive zone. He's not the ideal defenseman for everybody, but if you look at what he brings to this team in terms of, like, moving the puck, creating the amount of offense he does, and kind of just being that fourth attacker in the offensive zone, and kind of just bringing a physical edge sometimes too. Like, you're not going to replace that anywhere. I mean, just look at how good the team was before and after him, and especially look at how you got to remember how the team played when he broke his leg in early 2020, and they were trying to make a top pair out of, like, Jacob Slavin and Joel Edmondson. Like, you have to remember how rough the team is. That team barely gets into the playoffs. So Dougie Hamilton, you make the playoffs. Without him, I don't know. But I do think if he leaves, it's time to go. They need to look at, like, a bigger name elsewhere. And when I mean that, I don't mean a defenseman necessarily. I mean, like, they have to make a big move in a trade. Whether that means getting in on the Eichel sweepstakes, or maybe going after, say like a Philip Forsberg or somebody, just throwing a name out there, then yeah, that's what I would do personally, because you're not going to replace Hamilton 1-for-1. However, if he does leave, you also lose Bean and Gardner, you do need kind of an all offense type of defenseman somewhere. I don't really know who that is off the top of my head. I don't think a Jake McCabe or a Mike Riley is going to be enough to paper over Hamilton's loss. So you got to add to the forwards, even if you do replace him with, like, a $4 million or $3 million defenseman in free agency. I will say I do have faith in this front office in kind of adding a big name, just because they seem like they're willing to add. Well, I mean, you look at the one of the first moves they did is they got Dougie Hamilton, and then they were in on Patrick Laine that offseason. They even after adding some pieces, then they also added Trocheck kind of out of nowhere, and they moved a first-round pick for Brady Shea. So they're willing to do things. Whether that, I don't know if they're going to go after the right player, but I know they're definitely going to do something, especially if Hamilton kind of prices himself out of Carolina. So, the question just showed up. What's the biggest piece you would include in a Jack Eichel trade? I mean, one of Suzuki or Jarvis absolutely is going to have to be included in that deal. I know that much. Because, I mean, yeah, I know everybody is pretty low on where Buffalo's front office is right now. I'm trying to be realistic, because it's like, yeah, you're not going to get him for a bag of pucks. You're not going to get them for like say Niederreiter and like Jake Bean or some kind of package like that, even with how bad the situation is there. But I do think they're going to have to. The biggest piece I would give up to get Eichel, though, like, I mean, to me on the roster, everybody except. Really, everybody except Aho, Teravainen, Svechnikov, Slave, and Pesci. And I guess I don't know if I include Hamilton in that group just because he's an unrestricted free agent, but like anybody, well, and Nietzsche, like anybody not in that group, in my opinion, I would listen to something about at least. Just because that's kind of what they did when they first. That's kind of what this new front office did after they cleaned house a couple of years ago. It's like, okay, we have a set of players that are untouchable, and these are the guys. Everybody else is kind of just not replaceable per se, but it's like we can win with. There are players on this team we can win with. It's like it's your Slavens, it's your Pesci's of the world, it's your Ahos, your Teravainens, Svechnikov. And another one. If Nietzsche was the player Buffalo wanted for Eichel, would you consider it? Yeah, I would consider it at the very least. I mean, I'm a little wary of where Eichel. I'm a little worried of just Eichel just because of the neck surgery, and just because that is just such a weird, situation. Like him wanting a surgery on a herniated disc and the team not wanting him to get it, and it's just a. I don't remember any player getting that. I think Chris Letang did a couple years ago, and he's still Chris Letang. So yeah, I would definitely consider it for sure because I don't. How good is Marty Nate? You look at like Marty Natchez. How good is he? How good can he be? And how good Eichel is right now? Like, yeah, you definitely listen to it at the very least. All right, the next question, a little more of a system one, is Rod Brendamore's dump and chase heavy system holding the team back? That's a tough one just because I always have a tough time figuring out what the system is and what is players just leaning on bad habits and kind of improvising just because hockey is such a read and react type of game. There's not a lot of set plays, especially in the run of play. But like one thing that does concern me a little is looking at the prospects that graduated from Charlotte, like not, or I guess it's Chicago now, but like I look at like the players that come up, they try to integrate some more skill players into the lineup sometimes, like Yanni Kokkonen came up, Eetu Listerainen came up, and they just didn't fit. Whereas like a guy like Fogel fit in, a guy like Walmart fit in, and they play such a simple game. Like Clark Bishop looked like he was going to stick around for a while until he got the concussion, and so I'm a little concerned about that, just because it seems like veteran pieces fit in here more than like not the obvious skilled guys, because like Svechnikov fit in, so did Natchez eventually after a year or so, and just because like this system is just because like the way this team plays is such high energy, you have to forecheck a lot, you have to work really hard, you have to kind of improvise out of nothing, because that's what a lot of their plays are. And because that's like what a lot of their plays are. Like there's not a lot of, they had a lot of goals off of like non-entries this year. By that I mean like they don't really dump the puck into the zone, it's just the other team regroups after a broken play, and they kind of forecheck and create something out of nothing and get a quick play in front of the goal. And I do wonder if like not every player can easily fit in with that, because I remember how rough Trocheck looked at the start of his tenure here, and then he kind of adapted as time went along. Like he got placed in that line with Niederreiter and Marty Natchez, and he became more of like a net front guy, and he fit into it. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like it got him to a point, because I don't know. Players here don't really get benched for mistakes they don't get benched for mistakes like that quickly, at least not the forwards. And yeah, well, that, and just I look at the roster and I wonder like which players are getting held back exactly too. Because Aho and Natchez have the opportunity to freelance if the opportunity presents itself, but a guy like Teravainen is somebody when think of as a guy that forechecks and dumps the puck in a lot, but that's what he does, and it's not exactly like you just watch him play. You don't think that's what he does, but it's what he does with the Hurricanes, and it works for him. But I always wonder if there is a little more because he's such a cerebral player here. Like he's more of a passer, whereas Aho kind of takes the reins on that line. So I do wonder if a little more freedom on the wings could help somewhat. Like, but I also don't know if that's more of like a rigid system thing or if that's like, or if that's just players kind of falling back into bad habits. But that's also kind of part of the system because if you're struggling, you sort of lean on what the coach tells you to do. You do the basics. You lean on what you essentially lean on what your system is, and the Hurricanes do kind of fall back into that sometimes, especially when things get tough. They kind of go back to just cycling the puck forever and settling for a non-ideal shot, or it's somebody like Shea or Hakanpää who gets the puck in the slot and they're going to miss it by like 10 feet, but they're the guy that's open and they're not going to try to force things. So yeah, maybe a little, but I also look at how Tampa plays, and I don't really think there's like a rigid system there. A lot of it is just really good players reading and reacting off of each other. So it's a tough one. I do think they need to. I mean, I also think this is kind of just a talent thing sometimes, because Tampa Bay can play any way you want to, and they're gonna probably be better than you at it. Like that's what happened this series. They're both teams that create a lot off the forecheck, and Tampa Bay was just better because they have defensemen who can clear the puck out quickly, and their forwards are going to follow up each other and get it out. Meanwhile, in Carolina, they kind of tried to do that same thing, but a lot of their clears got picked off, and yeah, that's kind of what I do want to see improved, though, as far as like just getting the puck out of the zone more efficiently, because it kind of turns into a fire drill sometimes quickly if they're up against a better team. Like this was a problem when we played Dallas this year. Like this is kind of a random team to bring up, but for most of the year I felt like we were pretty good at getting the puck out of the zone efficiently. Like even if they have to dump it out, like there was a guy streaking out of the zone and getting in it and creating a rush with speed. Or if they forechecked, like there was good support, there was a guy in front of the net ready to create a deflection or something. Whereas against a more rigid team like Dallas, it was tougher because they forecheck you a little harder. There's two guys coming at you instead of one, or there's one guy kind of hanging out the blue line ready to intercept the clear, and that's where it kind of fell apart. So I do think maybe they need to be a little more patient with getting the puck out of the zone. Maybe not clear it out like at their first, like when there's a sign of danger, their first like move can't be just like backhanding it out of the zone all the time, because like with my tracking with zone exits, like sometimes it doesn't really matter how you get it out. It's failing exits that are what kills you the most. And like a lot of people consider like a pass out of the zone like a risky play if it's not there, but clearing the puck out of the zone is also just as risky, especially with how teams play now, because a lot of guys that's what a lot of teams do now. They just kind of backhand it out of the zone, and the Hurricanes are no different. And a team that's good at forechecking like Tampa Bay or Dallas is just going to intercept those, and then it turns into a fire drill where there's 2-on-1s down low. And that's really what got them in Game 4. So yeah, I think that's where they can get a little better, because that's just going to minimize some damage some damage and some self-inflicted wounds. So yeah, like I said, this also goes back to whether it's system or bad habits, and I think it kind of goes hand in hand. But we'll see what the roster looks like next year, and if things change. All right, so next question is, what is your favorite element of the team? This can be stylistic, roster construction, etc. I mean, what I really liked about this team this year is there was always a new guy just stepping up, or a different line stepping up pretty much every game. Jordan Staal had a great season. Aho did his thing this year, consistent as ever. Svechnikov had a down year in terms of goals, but even he was creating, like on the nights where he wasn't scoring or when he was in a slump, he was still creating. Like he just shined as a playmaker this year. And then you had guys come up from Chicago like Lorentz start to kind of cement themselves as NHLers this year. Geeky won them a few games this year, especially late in the season when he was playing a little more. So I just really like the by committee effort that the team had. And it wasn't so much in the playoffs. I mean, kind of in the Nashville series with Brock McGinn going up to the top line, having a good game there. But really, that's just what I like. That's just what I liked about this year. They just kept finding ways to win, and it wasn't always pretty. Like, it wasn't great, but like they also just kept finding a way. Which, I mean, that's kind of what Brendan Moore has sort of instilled in the team. They're always in the game regardless. They're having a lot of games where it's just been a total laugher, which is honestly a refreshing change from some of the previous teams we've had. And on to the next one. Let's see. What changes, if any, should the Canes make in their approach to the offensive zone? Well, one thing that does annoy me a lot is when they cycle, they have a tendency to kind of stick a guy in front of the net and he doesn't really move. I wanted to get a clip of this just so it doesn't look like I'm sort of bullshitting nothing, but if you watch the team, you know what I'm talking about. Like, their cycle is usually only a 4-man cycle because they'll have a guy go to the front of the net and just stay there. And I think they can do better because if they can learn anything from Tampa Bay is that they don't use a lot of stationary screens. They have a guy move around, pop in and out of the slot, be a passing option. And Trocheck was a little better at that this year, mostly on the power play, though. At even strength, not so much. But, like, if you're facing a good skating team in the defensive zone, you're just cycling forever and going for rebounds, that's really... It kind of limits you. And I really want them to look at what Florida did. What Florida did this year, they were probably one of my favorite teams to watch. Like, their roster is so weird, but their team is so just fun to watch and so, like, potent offensively. And they were creating odd man rushes out of nowhere. They cycled the puck around with a ton of movement. They had a guy going up high. They had, like, Mackenzie Weegar cycling the zone to look for cross-seam passes. It was a lot of fun to watch. With a very weird roster, too, and I feel like we have kind of a weird roster, like, depending on what the team comes back with next year. I think there's going to be at least a couple new players. But, like, Florida, what they did was they were a competitive team with, like, not the most ideal roster, and I think we can kind of look at that and do the same thing. But I do wonder how much of that is reps and how much of that is just read and react. Like, do they need a lot of practice to get this done, or are they better where they can just kind of go out and play? Because some teams are different. The vibe I got from this team this year is they were a team that just... They were better off not thinking about it and just kind of going out and doing their thing. So, we'll see. Like, I don't want them to get too robotic with this, but I also kind of want them to freelance a lot like the Lightning do. Or like Vegas does sometimes. Like, if you watch Vegas a lot, their defensemen are so active with getting to, like, below the face-off dots, and while it's not like the most ideal... They don't have the most ideal players shooting the puck most of the time, because I don't think you want your defensemen shooting and being on the receiving end of all of your like dangerous passes into the slot. But I do think that's a way to maybe get an extra goal or two on the season, which can make a difference. Because, like, Vegas is so good at kind of getting their defensemen open and creating cycles down low. And I think we're probably better suited to play like Vegas than like Colorado with how the roster is constructed. And I do think we can be better off the rush and not like dumping the puck in at first sight. So maybe get guys like Teravainen, Niederreiter. Fogle started dumping the puck in a lot more this year. He used to not be like that. And I do think we can look for somebody else. Somebody in the chat asked if Blake Coleman can be a Fogle replacement. And like Coleman is what everybody wishes Fogle was, because he is annoying as hell to play against, and he's very good at creating rushes on his own and kind of beating defensemen one-on-one. So yeah, he's kind of the type I would look for. I think there might be a player that's cheaper than Coleman, because I think Toronto or Edmonton is going to go after Blake Coleman. So I do wonder if you can look for somebody similar to that, so that would help. But they also have guys they can probably look to graduate from within, like Jarvis and Suzuki can play that way. I'm very curious about that Dominic Bach kid they have in Chicago that they got in the Justin Falk trade because a lot of prospect people like him. And yeah, so we'll see if it's a talent thing or if it's a roster construction and talent thing or if it's just a system habits thing. We'll see. All right, so next question. Looking at the current team's free agents, who would you target for the Canes in the offseason? And a few names are mentioned: Tyson Barrie, Brandon Saad, and Freddie Anderson. Yeah, Barry's a tough one. You're gonna have to, you had to live with some of Hamilton's warts. Tyson Barrie has like six times the amount of warts that Hamilton does, but I think this team, like with the way the top four is constructed right now, they're insulated enough to where they can handle having a Tyson Barrie on the team who's not going to really break up any entries. He's going to struggle at handling pressure, but he can command things in the offensive zone well. And also, I think the difference with Barrie is like a lot of people in Edmonton talked about this. Like the one boost you got from him is that when he's making that pass on the power play to McDavid or Draisaitl, it's always on the tape, and that creates like an extra goal or two on the power play. But the question I wonder there is it a luxury to have a Tyson Barrie on the team, or is it a necessity? So, I mean, if Hamilton leaves, Gardner's gone, and Jake Bean gets taken by Seattle, then yeah, I would definitely look for a Tyson Barrie type. But I don't know if that's gonna be like priority number one, especially since he's coming off like a 50-something point year. Like if they use like, say if Hamilton leaves for like $7 million and they spend $5 million on Tyson Barrie, like I won't be very happy about that, especially if it's a couple years. But I don't know, maybe Tyson Barrie will fit better here than he did in Toronto or Edmonton. Brandon Saad, I think, is probably like, if they're going after a veteran, he's like probably the ideal type. Like he would fit in like a glove here and give you exactly what the roster needs and kind of fit into how they already play. So I don't know what the other free agents are this year. I was looking around a little bit. I think Mike Riley is an interesting name. Jake McCabe might be a good fit too, but I don't know. I don't know I don't know who's going to run the power play if all three of those guys leave and your top four is Slavin, Pesce, McCabe, and Brady Shea. Like you might have to go to 5 forwards if that's the case. But I also need to look at the UFAs a little more. I've just been so entrenched with the Hurricanes playoff race. All right, next question is, if you can keep only one of Martinook, McGinn, or Fogle, who are you keeping and why? My brain says keep Brock McGinn because that's the guy you can move up and down the lineup if you need to. But I also look at what he did this year, and I look at what Brandon Tanev makes right now for 6 years, and I'm like, do you want to do that when you have other guys to sign and you have players that you're looking to graduate? Because blocking prospects that's not really ideal, but banking on prospects is kind of the same thing. So I would definitely talk to him again to see if he wants to come back for, say, 2 years. Just because he's the easiest guy he played the best out of those guys this year. If they need somebody to move up, if they needed like a grinder to go high in the lineup, he was the one guy who could do that and play well. Martinook, I get it. Like he's a captain. I mean, he's an alternate captain, and he just did not play well this year, like for what he's making, and unless he takes like a huge discount, I just cannot. The math gets really tough with bringing him back on top of everybody else, and I'd be sad to see him go just because he's such a good guy, a good locker room guy, but I don't know. Fogle, I talked about Fogle earlier. I think you can do better than him in your top 9. So if somebody wants him in a trade, I'd listen. And if Seattle wants to take him, then just let them, to be honest. Like I'm not really thrilled with losing a top 9 forward for nothing, but I also think you can do better. I think this team can do better than Warren Fogle. Like he's still young. I think he can still get better, especially if the team starts to play better. But you just signed Jesper Fost for 2 years last year. And you have, I mean, Morgan Geeky's a pretty similar player. They just graduated Steven Lorentz. And it's like you have guys who can work hard, kill penalties, and be energy line players. Like Nino Niederreiter scored 20 goals this year, but if he regresses, he becomes a very good checking line forward, making a lot of money. And then I don't know if you want to double down on that when you can make the roster better elsewhere. So, hang on. So like, I mean, if they want to do a reface of the team, then I would move on from all three. But if I have to pick one, I would pick Brock McGinn. With the asterisk being there, unless he wants Brandon Tanev's contract. Just because I think, I mean, just look at how they brought up McGinn. Second round pick, who turned into a very good checking line player. You can do that. Like this team is very good at turning prospects into checking line players, which, I mean, that counts for something. At least it counts for something, especially when it comes to making decisions like this. I think that's, all right, we got one more question. Oh, there's some questions in the chat. If they let Shea go to Seattle, would Alec Martinez be a good replacement? Honestly, yeah, that's probably, like, if I had to clone Brady Shea, Alec Martinez is probably the same guy. Just because I was actually watching Vegas a little bit last night, and he's very similar. He's better with the puck, but Vegas is also better at getting the puck out of the zone than the Hurricanes are. So, but they play very similarly because he plays with Shea Theodore a lot, and that's kind of your. He does the simple things. He does the basics. He kills penalties. He clears the puck. He clears the crease, and they can just focus on. And everybody else can kind of just focus on their job. And the weird thing is, Shea was not good with the Rangers this year. Like, look at like some of the stats on Evolving Wild. Like, he's still not great, especially for what he makes. But like, he's been pretty good. Like, he's been okay across the board, especially for the role he plays on the team where he's not going to have the puck much. It's just, you have to ask if that's worth $5.25 million. Like, as of right now, the Hurricanes might have to live with it, but as time goes on, that might be a deal they can like move on from. I think there's one more question here. How do you think Kucherov impacted the series? Well, he had, I don't know how many points he had, but I think he had a goal in almost every game. I mean, I look at Game 4, he pretty much took that over by himself, and that was the turning point in the series. I don't know although if Kucherov's not there, do they lose in 6 or do they lose in 7? Which, like, that's unfortunately where my head is at after that series. But yeah, I think it just kind of showed like the level of like the Hurricanes. They were here, they got to here, but the Lightning are all the way up here still. So what can you do? And one last question: what is your favorite AFI album, and why is it Sing the Sorrow? You know, it does not hold a candle to Crash Love. I'm just kidding. It's obviously Sing the Sorrow. Excited for the new album tomorrow. Bodies, even though they've released like half of it on Spotify already. But yeah, I think that's all the questions I got, and managed to kill like 45 minutes. So yeah, thanks for sending me your questions. This was a lot of fun. I was actually surprised I got people in the chat asking questions. Just kind of posting this out of nowhere in the middle of the day, but thanks for joining me, and maybe I'll do it again after if the Hurricanes do anything in the off season. It's a lot more fun than writing a blog post. So I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me.